The FBI has been under a lot of criticism lately, majorly for failing kind of everywhere, including not securing the Capitol Hill building or preventing that attack. There's been some allegations that maybe they had some undercover, unidentified, implanted agents that really might have been behind the Governor Whitmer kidnapping plot. We know one of those FBI agents was now arrested for allegedly a domestic violence offense. And the OIG, which is the Office of the Inspector General, just came out again today and published a new investigative summary that is detailing continuing malfeasance within the FBI. This is a 2-page summary, which doesn't give us a whole lot more information, but it does refer us back to a 2018 report, which of course we were not on the show, not covering this at the time, but I was reading through that report to kind of juxtapose this all together, and it is worth diving into because it really uncovered a lot of the problems that the FBI is facing. So we're going to dive into all of that. Let's get into it. I want to start by taking a look at what we have here. This was posted on the OIG website. So this says it's findings of misconduct. And I want to pay special attention to this. They don't actually tell us who this is. They say it's by a senior FBI official, right? So they're not going to label this person in the formal document, which is where this is all being investigated. So for those of you who do not know, the OIG is a separate, supposed to be an independent body that anytime there's a governmental problem, they're going to come in and investigate it. You don't want to sort of investigate yourself like the police do because they always find that they did nothing wrong. So we have a separate body, the OIG, that comes in and investigates. They're investigating the FBI because there's been complaints about the FBI. So they write their report. They spend all this time and money into it. This comes out yesterday, July 20th. It says that there were numerous findings of misconduct, and it's a then senior official. So we don't know who it is. And what's the problem? Well, they got unauthorized contacts with the media. Why is the FBI talking with the media? Why are they accepting gifts from members of the media? It's all not good. This is the summation of it. The investigative summary, 21096, says that the findings of misconduct were for having numerous unauthorized contacts with the media. So we're going to go through this. We're going to sort of jump around a little bit. I want to go through this next paragraph, and then we're going to jump back into 2018 because it's referring us over there. There was an investigation that took place after 2018. Remember all the big names that we heard back then? We heard James Comey and Peter Strzok, and we heard Lisa Page and the FBI lovers, and we heard the Steele dossier, and we heard Paul Manafort, and all of these different names that were sort of stemming from the idea that back from about 2014 to 2016, which were the years leading up to Donald Trump being elected, that there was some malfeasance, some very big improprieties taking place within the FBI. And after the election, a lot of that started to come out. We started to see that Steele dossier may have been funded by some nefarious actors, may have been pushed over to the FBI so that they could get a FISA warrant so that they can go start spying on the Trump campaign, even though all of that evidence, the foundation upon which that FISA warrant was executed, was all sort of lacking in foundation. So in 2018, the OIG went out, did this very deep dive investigation, and they put out, I think it was a 500-page report. I mean, a really big report. And there was one little blurb in there that they needed to expand upon. So they took that out. They did a deeper dive on that one segment. And now 2 years later, we've got some information about it. So let's see what's going on here. It says the DOJ and the Office of the Inspector General, so the Department of Justice under which the FBI sits, started this investigation when they got records from the FBI Insider Threat Unit alleging that a then senior FBI official, so there's an insider threat unit within the FBI, they report, they say, hey, we've got somebody who's a senior FBI official who is talking to the media, had numerous contacts with members of the media between January and November 2016 in violation of FBI policy. Was there anything interesting happening between January and November of 2016? Yeah, it was the entire election, right? Donald Trump was running in full steam. Hillary Clinton was running in full steam. We know that there was a lot of conversations taking place between the FBI and many other people who were investigating the Trump campaign. And now this inquiry is focusing on just that specific timeline, January to November. This matter is among the other OIG investigations that are referenced on page 430 of the 2018 report. Okay, so you're seeing they're referencing us back over to this 2018 report, which looks like this. Very big document published June 2018, right? So it's just coming up on the midterms during the Trump administration. And I'm not sure if you saw this, right? I didn't really spend any time on this because I wasn't on YouTube doing this stuff at that time. But it says a review of the various actions by the FBI. Very, very big document. We're not going to read it all. Of course, it's over 500 pages. But if you recall, they refer us over to page 430 right here. They say, go check that page out because this is a continuation of that. So we'll get some background. What section are we in? This is page 428. It says that the allegations are that the department and FBI employees improperly disclosed non-public information. And I know, look, I know when I start reading through some of this stuff that it probably can get a little bit boring, but there's some very strong language in here. And this is not like, 40 years ago. This is 3 years ago. Many people who are a part of this are still at the FBI. And I hear a lot of people constantly say, well, it's just the leadership class at the FBI that's a big problem. It's not the rank and file, right? A lot of people on the right say this specifically. It's not everybody. It's just the people on the top, like James Comey. Well, James Comey's not there anymore. So we still have some problems with the FBI, don't we? And you're going to notice as we go through this language, this is not a small, isolated problem. So let's get back to the report. It says, among the issues we reviewed were allegations that the department and FBI employees improperly disclosed non-public information, leaking information. We found the department and FBI raised considerable concerns about the leaks, particularly in October 2016 regarding the Minier investigation and the Clinton Foundation investigation. Leaky all over the place, or at least communicating things to certain people about those investigations. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's being made public. It just means that they're communicating it out, right? So in other words, you and I may not be getting this data, but the FBI is communicating it to other people inappropriately, one of which may be the Clinton Foundation or the Clinton team. Against this backdrop, as noted at the time, the OIG announced this review. We examined allegations that the department and FBI employees improperly did that. We focused in particular on April and May, and then October 2016. We have profound concerns about the volume and the extent of unauthorized media contacts by FBI personnel. Not like slight concerns, profound concerns about the collusion between the FBI and the media. Remember that word that they could not stop sputtering out of their mouth every 2 seconds? The FBI was colluding with the media. The Office of the Inspector General says we have profound concerns about the volume and the extent. So a lot of contact and some deep contact. Our ability now, so you might say, okay, well, who the hell was talking with the media? We got to go find them and make sure that they get punished. OIG says, well, we tried to do that. Our ability to identify individuals who improperly disclosed is hampered. 2 reasons. 1, we frequently find that the universe of employees who have access to this stuff is substantial, often involving dozens, in some instances more than 100 people have access to that public or to that private information. They say we recognize this as a challenge, but nevertheless, we think the FBI needs to consider if there's a better way to handle the dissemination of sensitive information. Second, the second reason, although the FBI policy strictly limits employees who are authorized to speak to the media, we found that this policy appeared to be widely ignored, right? Numerous FBI employees at levels with no official reason to contact the media were nevertheless in frequent contact with reporters. No reason to talk to the reporters, still doing it. Large number of FBI agents who were in contact during this time impacted our ability to identify the source of the leaks. There were just too many of them doing it. Couldn't find it. We tried to identify this. We've got reports and the list goes on and on. Too many people. We can't break it down. In addition to the significant number of communications between the FBI and journalists, we identified social interactions between FBI employees and journalists that were, at a minimum, let's say, inconsistent with FBI policies. For example, instances where employees received tickets to sporting events from the journalists, went golfing with media outings and media representatives, were treated to drinks and meals after work by reporters, were the guests of journalists at non-public social events. We will separately report on these investigations as they are concluded, consistent with our policies. They go on. This is the last slide from the 2018 report. Remember, we're still in June 2018. The OIG says the harm caused by the leaks, the fear of potential leaks, and a culture of unauthorized media contacts is illustrated later. We detail the fact that these issues influenced FBI officials who were advising Director Comey on consequential investigative decisions in October 2016. Do you know what that means? That means that the reporters and the journalists were having an impact on those FBI officials that then influenced Comey, right? This is not necessarily that this is being leaked one direction from the FBI back towards the journalists. It could also be that these officials, we don't know who they are, were meeting with the journalists and getting information from them that they were then passing back up the chain to Comey. And then Comey was ultimately making charging decisions in October 2016 relating to Hillary Clinton being charged. Remember? She was not charged. The FBI updated its media policy, restating its strict guidelines concerning media contacts and identifying everybody else. But they say, we do not believe the problem is with the FBI's policy. We found it to be clear and unambiguous, actually. Pretty clear. Rather, we concluded these leaks highlight the need to change what appears to be a cultural attitude. We recommend the FBI evaluate educating its employees about the media contact policy, the ethics rules, and its disciplinary penalties to deter such conduct. So that was in 2018. Do you think that cultural attitude has changed or gotten better or gotten worse since 2018? Do you think that the FBI is more inclined to execute justice independently and fairly? Or do you think that maybe they are still as compromised as they were back in 2016 when they helped to not charge Hillary Clinton to make sure that she did not get that and to also continue to investigate Donald Trump? Think anything's changed? Probably not. Let's see what else this article says. So wrapping up here, the OIG, this is bringing us back now. So we're now back in July 2021. The OIG investigated, substantiated the allegation that senior FBI officials had numerous unauthorized contacts. So all of that appeared in 2018. I'm sorry, in the 2018 report, so they did a deeper dive on it. In addition to substantive communications with reporters, the media contact also included social engagement outside the FBI headquarters, involving drinks, lunches, and dinners. They also violated federal regulations when the FBI official accepted tickets from members of the media to 2 black tie dinner events, $225 and $300 at one end or the other. Senior FBI official retired from the FBI prior to being contacted for an interview. When later contacted for a voluntary interview, he declined. Isn't that nice? OIG has the authority to compel testimony upon informing them that their statements will not be used against them. But the OIG does not have authority to compel testimony from former employees, including those who retire or resign during the course of the investigation. So this guy or woman does a bunch of inappropriate stuff, retires. OIG can't compel their testimony. That was the remainder of the conversation here. OIG completed its investigation, and they're going to provide this report to the FBI for its information. Isn't that nice? So, hey, guys, hey, we found you have a really bad culture and that you're doing a bunch of inappropriate stuff. Here's a big, fat report over here. Maybe you can do something with this. They're probably going to take that along with Rand Paul's charging recommendation for Dr. Fauci and just throw that right in the bathroom along with the other toilet paper, because that's as much respect as they give it. All right, so let's take a look at some questions coming in over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com on this topic of the OIG report. Let's see what we've got here. We have a couple that came in. FBI has a lot of problems. It says the Federal Unemployment Tax Act is here. Says in the Governor Whitmer kidnapping case, apparently the FBI needed 12 informants to infiltrate a group of 6. And the informant were training the group of 6 and furthering the plot. Would this count as entrapment? Hence, they use an entrapment defense. Yeah, so certainly if you're a defense attorney, you're considering that as an option. We covered this case some time ago. And when we did cover it, we went through the report and we were reading through the affidavit. And I remember reading that there were certainly some undercover. There were some people that were not properly identified in there, but it didn't seem like it was that number, right? Like 12 and 6. But as more of this comes out, it's sounding like that there may have been other informants or other undercover agents that never made it into the documents. So what made it into the documents where there were, let's say, just by way of example, let's say there were 10 threats. 3 of the 10 were undercover agents. That's what the reports look like. But if it really wasn't the case, they only talked about 10 people in the report, but there were actually about 20 people who were involved, and about 13 of those people were undercover agents. Well, that tips the scale right now. The majority of the people who are involved in this are not of this, militia or whatever they were calling themselves. It was really more of the FBI. And if the FBI was predominantly responsible for the commission of the offense. And if you recall, we went through this frame by frame. And I even went through and I said, nope, that's not criminal, not criminal, not criminal, not criminal, because it's not a conspiracy. It's not an act in furtherance of anything to just sit around and talk about it. But the moment they got in the car and drove by her house to start doing surveillance, I started to say, okay, now we're talking about a volitional act that moves that ball forward. But if that volitional act was induced by the FBI agents, in other words, if they would not have done that thing, but for the influence of the FBI, well, then I think that certainly fits within the entrapment defense. But there's a lot more analysis that needs to be done there. We have Miss Lucky says, Sergeant Bob is here. We got Sergeant Bob is in the house. Good to see you, Sergeant. Says, read a book a long time ago, J. Edgar, well documented on Hoover's control. He had so much dirt on politicians, they would not ever criticize or remove him. For a time, he parted with mafiosa and denied the mafia exists. Thus, a culture began. Worth a read if you can get it. J. Edgar. Didn't they make a movie about that? I never saw that. But J. Edgar, yeah, J. Edgar Hoover, the Hoover FBI building, right? I visited there as a boy when I went to D.C. with my mom as a child, and I remember being just fascinated by it. We went through did a little tour down there at the FBI building. Very, very interesting. We've also talked about on this channel, I think Hoover was in charge when they framed those 4 guys for the murder of, I think it was the Czechs. There was a Czech. I can't remember the specifics there. But yeah, they framed 4 people for murder in the 1950s and 60s. This is not a new thing, right? Secretive intelligence agencies that are a part of your government that sort of have unbridled power and can get away with anything, not a good thing, right? We need to have some serious checks on those institutions. Another no name is here, says, how does the FBI operate correctly when it looks like DC looks like a ghost town? Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to be just on Twitter and social media looking for the insurrectionists. Thunder7 says, this confirms what Trump has always said. The FBI and the media worked in collusion to discredit Trump. The FBI are totally corrupt and probably can't be reformed. Yeah, if it's a cultural thing, really hard to change that, right? Really hard to take a ship and just adjust it, change direction on an entity as big as the FBI, but we'll see. Random Graham is here. Good to see you, Random Graham. All right, let's see. We've got good evening, Rob. I'm wondering, in regards to the FBI and the other 3-letter agencies, is there any chance or even a possibility that the American people can hope to reduce the size of our federal government and bring back the power to the state and local governments? To me, it seems this is why the entire DC machine media was so against Trump, because he called out both the left and the right for their incompetence. Also, if you want to watch a good documentary, check out Robert Barnes' half-hour special on Robert Mueller, the Deep State. Very informative in regards to the current state of affairs of the FBI and how it impacts our current system of how laws are carried out. That's from Random Graham. Thank you for that, Random Graham. Very well put together paragraph and comment. So absolutely big shout out to Robert Barnes. He does these hush-hush segments over on his channel at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, which is a sister community to us, way bigger. Right? We're the little sibling, kind of, annoying everybody, but they've got a big community over there, a lot of activity, and he does these segments called Hush Hush, where he sort of dives into some history topics and goes into some of those things that people might call conspiratorial. I don't. I just think it means that you're asking appropriate questions. I just got my haircut, if you notice, but I was having a conversation with Miss Amanda over there, and we were sort of asking ourselves, why are the conspiracy theorists, why is that word sort of used as pejorative now, right? There's a lot, I sort of take issue. I think the person who's more weird is the person who just believes everything the government says. You know that person. Everything they say, oh yeah, obviously. Clearly, yeah, we got to just do that, whatever they say. That's a little bit more weird to me than somebody who says, well, I don't really trust that. And maybe this might be an alternative explanation. And, that was not always the case, I think, in our society. And it's slowly changing that way. And so I think, we see this. I talk a lot about the pendulum swinging other directions, but you're starting to see some shifts in this country, right? A lot of people are leaving the cities. People are moving into rural locations. People want to get out of the cities because they realize kind of how bad it was when things locked down. No toilet paper. People are scrambling. Food shelves are getting cleared up. And so people kind of just want to remove themselves from that. And I think that when you start to see some more demographic shifts, you will see some more local governance. And, I'm starting to think that that might be my long-term plan, 20 years down the road, is to sort of see what I can do to, unplug as much as possible from the burdensome parts of the system. And if the government keeps spending the way that it does and society continues to sort of, balloon at the seams in terms of the responsibilities that the government tries to manage on a regular basis, I think it's going to start to collapse upon the weight of itself, right? People are losing faith in the government regularly already. Buildings are falling down. They can't control fires. Water's running out all over the place. People can't keep the electricity on. They can't secure their own headquarters in Washington, D.C. FBI's failing across the board. Internet's being hacked all over the place. We have a demented president in the White House. The systems are just sort of crumbling. The infrastructure is literally crumbling, and the institutions are crumbling. And that's a sad thing. And that doesn't mean that it's without an opportunity to repair and restore those, but sometimes they got to crumble a little bit so that they can be rebuilt better. I'm not built back better, but I'm saying rebuilt, right? Rebuilt with a more fundamental understanding of where this country, originated from, because there's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of bubble wrap that our government likes to wrap around everybody and say, we're going to protect you. And the question is that the proper scope of government? Is that the proper size of government? And I think the answer is no. But unfortunately, in order to convince people of that, sometimes you just have to let certain things run their course. And I think we're well on that road. So, Random Graham, my thought process on this, right, is to continue to develop your personal philosophy for living, and then doing things that will help you reach those goals or reach the ends that those values will lead you to, right? So like for me, right, one of my fundamental operating values is freedom. Think about that all the time. If I feel like I'm being trapped, I am less effective as a person, as a lawyer, as somebody here who spends time with you, and the list goes on and on. So I like to do things that are going to contribute to my freedom. And that means a lot of things, right? That means all sorts of, physical, financial things. That means mental things. That means certain relationships with different people. It means understanding my relationship in context of the federal government. And so, this is sort of getting out there a little bit. But my point is, as all of this stuff is happening around us, that doesn't mean that even though these institutions are crumbling, that doesn't mean that our lives are also, okay? We are not the government. Our lives are not the government. We are not what we see in Washington. We have our own lives, our own identities, our own communities. They like to connect us to them, but we are not them. So we can build our own lives that are better and separate and apart from a lot of the bureaucracy and a lot of the maintenance that is required by the federal government. And I think that there are a lot of solutions that are well underway right now in terms of decentralized projects like cryptography, crypto, new markets and new communities on the internet. A lot of things are happening. Let's see. We have LT13 is here, says, Jack Posobiec posted their text messages on Twitter today. Oh, the FBI text messages. Oh, that's good. I wonder if it was the lovers. Were these new text messages or old text messages? And Hyper Patriot is here, says, I realized over the last 2 years, yes, I'm late to the party, that the federal government is not the American people's friend. It's not at all. No, it's not. He says, abolish the FBI. Yeah, I'd be okay with that. What do? They can't really do much of anything. Is every day like really an episode of 24 with Jack Bauer, FBI agents like Jack Bauer saving America? I doubt it. Maybe I don't know. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona. Things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing, but you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, I want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching, and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.